If throwing a party for 3,000 or 4,000 people ever gets easy, this is as easy as it actually gets. My name's John Durfee. I'm the creator and producer of the Orange Drag Strip Reunion.
56 Chevy gets a good jump off the starting line. He gets there first.
So Orange Airport, which was just a small municipal airport, most of these airports were built for World War II. And the airports weren't doing a lot of business, but they were doing enough business to keep the doors open and the blacktop on. So when the 50s came along and people started doing a lot of racing, the NHRA evolved, and the NHRA basically, through Hot Rod magazines, started to form affiliations with hot rod clubs or municipalities to give kids a place to run the cars. So this is basically the stereotypical situation where Orange came in. The locals wanted a place to keep the kids off the street, they had an airport, and they had a Kiwanis Club, so it was a perfect match. So it's all teamed up. Kiwanis Club supported the racing, interfaced with the airport, and then drag racing in Orange was born. This would have been around probably 1954, 55. As far as the airport goes, as far as racing there goes, if you're in New England, it's really common to run into people that ran at the airport. The airport ran racing from around 54 up to around 71, 72, and just about anybody in New England who raced, and some national names came through Orange. Orange was definitely a real deal track, and a lot of things happened there. I mean, anybody who was racing in New England, they raced at Orange. So the track has a lot of history. It was a real thing. There's a lot of stories about what happened. When they got into the early 70s, I got a feeling that it probably became a situation where aviation was becoming big enough in the airport, and maybe the racing scene was starting to wane a little bit, I'm not sure, but I got a feeling it just became time for things to switch and for the racing to end. The airport wanted to just be an airport, and I think that's probably along the lines. There could have been something that precipitated the last straw, as they say, but it's not, the bottom line is that it came to an end. And definitely by 72, there was no racing at Orange Airport. I'd been aware of what had happened in Orange as a kid, as a young guy, but I was too young to actually go and participate or go and actually spectate. But I knew about it, and I had been working in Orange for, maybe a decade. And I kept thinking, somebody's going to do something to commemorate this. It was right about the time when cruise nights were getting popular. It was around the time when the hot rod thing started to get real popular again, when the beginning of primer and all that was just, before the term rat rod or any of that came around, just traditional hot rodding and stuff was becoming in vogue again. And so a lot of new car shows are coming on the scene, and there was a lot of talk about nostalgia. The drag tracks, the strips were starting to have nostalgia days, and more cars were starting to show up. It had come full circle. So the idea was, there was fertile ground to actually take on the idea. And I was sitting there wondering, why doesn't, somebody, when are they going to put on a show? And I'm sitting there waiting and thinking about it, and I had friends who were putting on shows for hot rods and stuff. So it was all around, the culture was all around, and it was really starting to, the time was really right, but how right of an idea it was, that I didn't know. And it all came down to, one of the key moments was I used to go to lunch. Every week I'd meet a buddy who lived in Orange his whole life, and he owned the local radio station, and we'd go to lunch and we'd just talk. And one day, for some reason, I just said, Jay, a friend of mine, Jay Dean, and we're just sitting there having a sandwich, and I said, I keep thinking about the Orange Drag Strip Reunion. The track used to be here, and all these years have gone by and I haven't seen anything come by to commemorate the show. Nobody's done anything as like a reunion of it or just to acknowledge its existence. It's almost become like a redheaded stepchild. And he's like, well, what are you thinking? And I said, well, I'm thinking maybe a show would really be a great idea. And as far as thinking it was a great idea, I mean, he's a Chamber of Commerce guy, and he just thought this is a great idea for the town, and we should celebrate this. And basically, the next thing I know, we're like meeting with the airport people, we're meeting with town people, he's introducing me to the people I needed to know, and we're making the rounds, and I'm not getting any real resistance from anybody. I'm getting a welcome feeling from the town. And the idea doesn't seem to be, I mean, we were trying to introduce the idea of race. So we're out there, you know, setting up for 2 days in chilly temperatures in September, getting ready to have this big car show. And we don't know if there's going to be 50 cars or 500 cars or 1,000 cars. And the morning of the show, we're there, we opened the gates, and all these people showed up. All these race cars came in, and all these show cars came in, and it was really, I mean, we really thought we were going to have to build this up over the course of a few years before we'd have a really good turnout, and we ended up having a really solid turnout. I mean, I think the first year was over 1,000 cars. We had no problems coming out of the 2010 show, so we really felt good about it. I went into the airport and met with the airport manager, and I said, so what do you think? We'd like to do a racing show. And he says, okay, well, tell me your concept. So I'm laying out the concept of how I see it happening and where I see it happening on the airport. And he's like, okay, well, a couple of things. One, you got to have insurance. Two, I need somebody who knows something about racing to come out and look at the facility and tell me that it's going to be okay.
I'm Eli English, and you're watching Classic Drive Television.
So I bumped into this guy at a car show earlier in the year, at a traditional hot rod show. And at the time I was driving a Hillborn injected car on the street. And so this guy stops by, and he actually, people ask, but this guy actually knew about injection. So we started a conversation, and it turns out that this guy is a Top Fuel racer. So I was like, here's my guy. Here's my expert that can come to Orange and look at this and put a face with some credentials on the racing aspect of the show. So that's what we did. We went out in the middle of the winter, out in the snow, and we're looking at this piece of blacktop and, kicking around and wheeling it off to see if we got enough, to do the actual deal. And so we go into the airport and we meet with the manager, and he says, yeah, this is all, I don't see any reason why this can't happen. I mean, the racing, we can only race for this distance, but I think we can make it happen. So this distance, this piece of blacktop was an abandoned piece of blacktop from World War II. It was an emergency landing strip if they had to land like B-25s there. So we had about 1,100 or 1,200 feet total. So we needed some kind of staging area. We needed a place for a water box and a starting line, and then we needed a race and a shutdown area. So necessity being the mother of invention, that's where the 330 Nationals were born. It's one of those things, 1/16 of a mile, 330 feet, most people can't get their head around it. And when I've talked to people, they'll come up to me and say, 330, that's not even enough to get started. But when they come and they run it, then they understand why we call it the world's toughest 330. That's the whole magic. And the fact that when you're only running 330, we can run cars. The insurance will allow us to run cars that can't run at most any track. We get the approval from the airport. I get the pieces lined up from the insurance company, and we start promoting the racing event. And I'm out there promoting racing and running into people who just don't believe that they think it's just going to be another static car show. They can't get past the fact that we're actually going to have racing at Orange. This is the year that we lovingly refer to as the Woodstock year. So we come into 11 thinking, okay, last year, we had X amount of show cars, we had X amount of people show up. We'll plan for a little bit more. Now we've got 10, 12 acres of space to use. Well, by 8 o'clock in the morning, we knew that something was happening. And by 9 o'clock in the morning, it was pretty clear that this was going to be a much bigger event than the previous year. You know, we're at about 10:30 now. There can't be too many more people waiting to get in. I walk out to Route 122 and I look in this direction and all I can see is cars. And I look down the other way and all I can see is cars waiting to get in. And people circling, waiting, because we basically now we've got the gate closed and I'm standing there talking to the local police about what to do, where we're going to put them. And now they're starting to tell me that cars are backed up on Route 2. This is not a problem that I had a plan for. We never figured that we'd be completely overrun. So that's why I got the name of the Woodstock year, because it really turned out to be a Yasgur's Farm situation. We had a motorhome race, we had, you know, bikes racing, we had all kinds of cool dragsters and stuff racing, and it just, the cars came out of the woodwork, and a lot of cars were shown that hadn't been seen in a long time. So it was terrific.
I'm Jim, and I'm from Lowry's Auto Restoration, and this is my crew, and you're watching Classic Drive Television.
Hi, I'm Mike from Evans Coolant. I'm here with Dirk Burrowes in his garage, and we just converted this 1949 Rover. And Dirk, now that we've permanently preserved this classic, what do you think?
Well, you know, it was simple, it was easy, just follow the directions that came along with the waterless coolant. And I'm looking forward not to having these kinds of problems with less than 500 miles on my Classic, gumming up and losing water pump. Mike, where can I find this?
You can find it pretty much anywhere, Amazon.com, Summit Racing, but I would start at evanscoolant.com.
Terrific. Hey, make sure to see the full episode of Classic Drive Television where we convert over the Rover to waterless coolant.
2012 was at Fitchburg, which was a whole different setup, a whole different venue, and we had a whole set of growing pains down there because the racing class, now that we had established racing, the racing class had gotten a lot bigger. We had to cap the racing class off and we started maxing out registration. 2013 was the first year that we had real official staging lanes with 2 lanes for each class, and the show ran like clockwork. And that's the year that people started coming up to me and saying, I can't believe it, I came here, I made 35 passes, I made 40 passes in one day. And that was the real turning point for the racing end of it. And then the show car counts at the same time once we went to Fitchburg and had these huge show fields, because we had almost unlimited acreage there. When we started doing this, we never started out to do 7 or 8, 10 or 20 shows. This was never going to be an annual, every year event. You know, we're not a conglomerate. This is a family affair. You know, this is run like grassroots. My wife helps out, my mom and my dad, my brother, and all of our friends. Anybody who's not sick of doing it, we round them all up and get them to do it. 19's been kind of interesting so far. We come into the open registration January 1st like we normally do, and normally we get some early birds who want to get right involved, and all of a sudden the hit counter starts tripping, and we have sold, we come into January, we go through the first 30 days and we've outsold every single year. Come into February, outsold every single year that we've been to at that point. Now we're into early March. Now I'm ahead of where I've been every single year for racing registrations and now vendor registration. And we're miles ahead of where we normally be at this time. The general feeling is that this is going to be a big one. Certainly the racing crowd is going to be heavy. I don't think there's any doubt that we will be sold out long before we get to June 15th. The show is on Greenland Road in Sterling, Mass. at the airport. So if you've never been, it's $15 to get in. It's a totally family-friendly show. Bring your cooler, bring your cameras, bring a lawn chair, bring some sunscreen, relax, have a great day, bring some earplugs, especially for kids. It's very loud, there's a lot of smoke, lots and lots of tire smoke. So if you're into smoke and tires, if you're into loud cars, if you want to see some real racing action and really non-stop action, this is where you want to come. And we hope that, you know, one of our hopes of the show is to bring people out who've never been. If you've never been to the drags, never been to a car show, come and see it. Come and see it. There's nothing else like it. Hey, I'm John Durfee, founder of the Orange Drag Stripper Union, and you're watching Classic Drive Television.